My name is Alana, and today I am joined by Tim Frame. Tim is a fellow encephalitis survivor that I have had such a pleasure to meet during Nicole's challenge, the Walk to Cure Encephalitis. And Tim, I've just been so inspired by your journey and just in such awe of how you've overcome some pretty tremendous obstacles and have yet bounced back, and you're here with us today. So I guess starting from the top, what was the beginning of your encephalitis journey like?
Okay, well, thanks for having me, Alana. I've enjoyed chatting with you and being a part of Nicole's challenge too. My encephalitis journey started back in May of 2014. Don't remember that day specifically, but heard all the stories and have told them a million times, I think. But it just started someday. I woke up with a fever. Didn't feel right. I was an athlete and very healthy and didn't feel sick often. And so, I don't know, I was like, wow, let me take my temperature. I'm 103. Wow, that's warm. Why am I sweaty? I haven't even been working out yet. So they went on and that fever didn't go away. And I started feeling a little dizzy as well. And something's not right. Let's probably go check it out at the, see at the maybe the emergency room or closest doctor. So closest doctor was the emergency room. We went there and they checked my, temperature and saw that it was 103 plus and said, oh boy, looks like you might. I was kind of stuffed up at the same time too and couldn't breathe real well through my nose. And they just said, well, I'm pretty sure this looks like a sinus infection. And let's get you on some antibiotics and treat you for your fever as well and see how it goes. So that was my introduction to the hospital that day, as I took the antibiotics and went home with some pain meds and said, okay, they're supposed to be better in the morning. And I guess I was a little bit the next day and felt a little better. And the next day after that, probably okay too. And then 3 days later, I woke up with somewhat of a fever, I guess. It was still high, but at the same time, very dizzy, very confused, and didn't quite know what was going on, to be honest, and didn't even know the person laying next to me in the bed when I woke up, and was a little confused about where I was. And that's when my wife at the time decided, boy, something's really wrong, and took me to the emergency room. And sure enough, I guess had they done a spinal tap that day, had they done some further testing to see why I had such a high fever, but it was just, hey, it looked like a sinus infection. So I was sent home with the wrong antibiotics, and had I maybe had some antivirals that day instead, who knows? But I wasn't. And so they treated me that day and kept me, actually, because I was pretty dizzy and quite confused at the time, and ended up, with diagnosed with viral encephalitis at that point. So that was 3 days after I initially went in. So that was my introduction to it. I don't recall those days, and they kept me for quite a while, actually, and was told I actually went into a coma-like state for 3 or 4 days shortly thereafter.
Wow.
So again,
So it was the second hospitalization that's
yes,
when they did a workup into the spinal tap, and then
correct.
okay.
They finally, went ahead and saw that it was something more than just, hey, this guy's got a stuffy nose and a high fever. So I guess that's where, I guess, as I think about that day, and how I've read up enough about encephalitis now, that it's tricky and doesn't always look like what it is at the time, and why I'm so passionate about making sure we raise awareness for that in that particular state. But shortly, that's where my story was there. I was in the hospital for a week, I'd say, and lucky to wake up, to be honest, one day after being in a coma-like state for a few days. But when I did wake up, I was in a real state of confusion and didn't know my own wife's name, didn't know my son's name, didn't know mine, to be honest, and didn't even know where I was for a while. So I was in the hospital about 3 weeks before they figured that I was back to somewhat normal, and I was sent home. And
Yeah. Did the hospital help to facilitate like supportive therapies outside of the hospital, or were you just kind of discharged and sent on your way?
No, there was a little bit of that. Short after the second time around, obviously they knew it was something very serious, and did get me hooked up with a neurologist. And the treatment after I got to go home was pretty much tied to an IV of steroids every day on a
Oh,
couch.
wow.
And the brain damage that I had suffered was to be treated with steroids to help repair brain matter. And
Mm,
I don't know, it didn't sit well with me as a athlete and someone who was always very busy and on his feet all day, to sit on a couch 24 hours a day and tied to an IV of steroids that
yeah, no kidding.
didn't work for me. And I'll be honest, they changed who I was. They had me on anti-seizure drugs as well, which obviously kind of messes with your mind as well. So I was kind of, the combination of those two kind of made me not know, where I was and what I was doing, to be honest, for quite a
Yeah.
while. And I wasn't the person I was before. I was pretty much, I wanted to eat everything because steroids make you want to eat everything.
Mhm.
And my mind was elsewhere because the anti-seizure drugs just make your mind kind of,
Yeah.
the
And
minute I suffered memory loss was the key other diagnosis that they noticed, that I couldn't recall even my own family members' names at
okay.
the time.
Yeah. So do you personally have much memory from that time, or is this kind of pieced together from what you've heard from others?
Those are great questions. I don't have memories being in the hospital for those few weeks initially, other than there's one video of me singing in the hospital, because I was part of a gospel quartet when I was in college and made an
Okay.
album. I was a singer.
Mm,
So and one of the people that were in my quartet, the piano player, sent my wife at the time a video of us, or our album, kind of by digitally, and she played it to me in the hospital. And what was amazing is I didn't know her name, but I could sing every word to the songs that I heard on the music. And
oh,
so
wow.
that's the only video I have of me in the hospital, when, with tubes tied to me like crazy. And I'm sitting there singing a song that, I sang in the 1980s. So it's weird how your brain gets affected, and that part of my brain, I guess, wasn't damaged.
Yeah.
And music's like that. I can still sing my favorite songs from the 70s and 80s when I was in high school, like they were yesterday. So that's my only memory of being in the hospital, singing songs from the 80s. Now, when I was home, I can recall between, let's say, the end of May and August, those 3 months, I pretty much lived on our living room couch downstairs, because I was having to be up in the middle of the night to change IV and do all kinds of stuff. And I didn't sleep well. So
Wow.
ate a lot, gained like 50 pounds because I was eating in the middle of the night. And this wasn't me either. I was very fit. I was kind of the P90X guy, ripped abs, the whole works, in my 40s, or I guess early 50s. Right at 50. I wanted to be fit in 50 was the idea. Anyways, like I said, I was a completely different person than the very regimented and I guess, I don't know, I just did things the right way type of, from an athlete standpoint, and I wasn't that guy anymore. So it affected me sitting on the couch and ballooning up and being unhealthy habits because of I guess the treatment I was getting,
Right.
was doing more harm than good, to be honest. It might have saved
Yeah.
part of my brain, but it kind of messed some other things up. And I don't know. I think I've shared with you, and my story. I had a pulmonary embolism in August that same year because I was sitting around on the couch inactive, and started in my legs with blood clots and made its way up to my heart. Nearly lost my life again. So that's where the I guess the treatment that an encephalitis survivor gets post going into that played a role too. I don't think anybody really knew how to treat it, to be honest. And I was kind of on my own and had to, just figure it out, I guess. So that's where I
Yeah.
was in August, and back in the hospital and having surgery to remove blood clots out of my heart because of the steroids, and finally got off and was on blood thinners shortly thereafter because of that for a couple of years. So thankfully the steroids went away and the mind altering drugs went away for the seizures. I was never really a seizure risk other than when you have brain injury, I guess you fall in that category. But
Did
I
you have
never.
seizures in the hospital, or
What's that?
did you have seizures initially in the hospital?
I don't think so. Technically, I was told that I would be at risk due to,
Gotcha.
just having a brain injury. But I don't believe I've ever heard that I truly had one, unless it was in that coma-like state that,
Yeah.
in that short window. And I think I just shared with you that the steroids caused avascular necrosis after that as well. And I had severe bone degeneration because of that, and why I've had a hip and shoulder replacement and 2 years later. One of the biggest things that was a challenge for me was to get to know, who I was again and the people around me, and, even what I did on a regular basis, and try to be that person, for not only my son, my wife, whoever I was getting to know again, was trying to be that person, that dad and that husband and that father. So as I did that, it was important to kind of look back and look at the pictures and stories and ask people, okay, who am I supposed to be? And some of those memories that I could see again on Facebook or in photo albums or hear stories from people were that I was an athlete and that I was active and that I was fit.
I guess, what was the role of physical activity and kind of bringing you back and giving you a new lease on life and, moving forward beyond encephalitis?
Sure. Well, again, like I'd said, some of the Facebook memories I had seen were me, working out, and I had actually in 2012, shortly before the injury in 2014, I'd become a personal trainer and got my license for that and started what was called Frameworks Fitness, because that was I wanted to coach soccer players and just more sporty type stuff is what I was hoping to do with it. And so I'd seen all those pictures and I'm like, wow, I want to do that. And along that line, all of a sudden I started seeing these pictures of me running a race with my son and a couple other young people. Those are the things that said, well, that must have been who I was. I wanted to be fit. I wanted to be healthy. And I wanted to be active and help others be healthy and active too as a trainer. And so those are the things I investigated. So I went looking for where can I do that, and found a little gym close by. They talked me into, hey, you want to do one of those races again? And I'm like, okay. And so I signed up and probably wasn't ready for one in 2015. This would have been less than a year after I'd had the pulmonary embolism. That was in August of 2014, and I was signing up for a Spartan race in March of 2015, about 6 months later.
Wow.
Probably wasn't advised at the time, but it was a moment that changed my life, and I'm thankful for it, because I went out and did it with them, and it was a team effort and wasn't about how fast we did it. It was just about doing something that you were told you'd never do again. And I don't know, it made me feel like I was that guy I saw a picture of with my son to a certain extent. And I saw how people responded to, once they heard my story and that I was out there doing something like that, how they responded to it in a positive way as well. And I don't know, it moved me and made me want to feel that and do that more. So I don't know, that's kind of how that started, and went kind of crazy from there, I'll be honest.
Yeah, well, I mean, that was already fairly crazy. So from there, I guess you're an incredibly accomplished Spartan racer. How many races have you participated in?
It turned into something, yeah. That, I'll be honest, that year in 2015 that I did that one race, I enjoyed it. And then there was another company called Tough Mudder that came to town shortly later that year that the other gym was going to do as well. So, okay, I'll go do it too. And it was wacky because they actually electrocute you at the finish line. And it was
Oh,
like, wow, I'm not sure I want to do this. It's a crazy, it's entertaining, but it was a little more extreme that I had in mind. I was like, I probably shouldn't be out here being electrocuted by stuff. But started the next year because this group and this gym was so supportive, and they had shared that with, I don't know, they done a neat conversation. They were a Spartan gym as well, and they shared my crazy story with Spartan, and they called me and said, hey, we'd love to know more about what you're doing. And all of a sudden I got a story written about me in the Spartan magazine in February of 2017 or 16, because I'd run one Spartan race. And I was like, what is going on? And so once that happened, it was a neat story about how I'd overcome a brain-eating virus and was back out there on a race course. And a company like Spartan that talks about obstacle course racing, they love a story about overcoming obstacles off a race course too. Ended up falling in love with the sport and the people that were a part of it, because they were so supportive of what I had overcome. And all of a sudden, I'm doing it all the time. And we talked about the avascular necrosis that started that year as well. And I started running races on a very sore hip, probably against doctor's orders or anybody else's orders. I was back out on the race course on crutches 2 weeks after hip replacement, and crutched a race or two. And actually,
send those photos to me.
I have them, and they're some interesting ones. But I did it, and it was again, how people responded and walked the race with me and helped me over certain things. They knew I was in pain, and I ended up doing a trifecta on crutches that year as well, and call it my crutchfecta. So I'm kind of known for that, and had a little spill in the fire jump obstacle one time that I'm kind of famous for in the Spartan pages, because there's a picture of me laying in the fire on my crutches and going across the finish line afterwards. So I'm kind of known for doing some crazy stuff too. And I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, but it started a journey that has opened up doors for me to work with all kinds of different athletes. And that goes for a number of other disabilities. And it's a sport that promotes that. So I'm thankful. I've ran races with blind people, with deaf people, with people with no legs, people with no arms. Me being out there doing it back then, even after my brain injury and memory loss and losing, I got a couple new parts now too. It's turned into something that I don't know. You see how it inspires others to overcome obstacles too. One of the other things I was told I'd never do, I'd lost all my education as well. And my work history, everything I'd done as a salesman or even as a student in college, I'd lost my marketing degree and all the things that I had. I was told I'd never be able to retain new information as well. But that year in 2017, I was dedicated while I was sitting at home recovering from my surgeries, and I re-earned my certification to be a trainer again that year as well. There's something about being told you're never going to do something again that makes you want to do it even more, I guess. It's a long, crazy story, but
So
you asked me a question. I've done a couple hundred races now. So
a couple hundred.
A couple hundred. I did that last year on my birthday when I turned 56. I did my 200th race down in Florida. My parents got to be a part of that and see some of the crazy stuff I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyways, that's what I'm proud of that, and how, like I said, I've been able to run races again with people that were, told they'd never run races again either. And it's a neat sport in that regard. It's not always about how fast you do something,
right?
Just doing it. And so I don't know. And it's opened up doors for me to share my story about encephalitis too. And the Spartan world knows what it is, at least now. And I wasn't just out there on, it was one thing to be able to see me on crutches or in a sling. That's a physical thing that can be seen. But a brain injury is completely different. And
Yeah, it's
and
largely invisible.
it is. I've run plenty of races with a weighted vest on too, what's supposed to represent the weight that someone with a traumatic brain injury has or a visible disability in general. At least makes it visible.
Right.
And so I've run that actually in a weighted vest at different places. I've worn it to work with my encephalitis. When I was doing Nicole's challenge last year, I was wearing it all over the store where I work now. And at least it brought some awareness to people who are asked,
Yeah.
why are you wearing that vest?
Yeah, I like that. That's a really clever idea. You've been really consistent with sharing updates every day and
Sure.
making progress towards your goals with Nicole's challenge. You want to expand a little bit about that?
Sure. And I'll even go back to, let's say last year when I first was introduced to Nicole's challenge. I just happened to be part of getting emails from back, I don't know how long ago, from Team Inspire.
Hmm.
And it just happened to pop up on my email one day. And I was like, what is this Nicole's challenge thing? And because I'll be honest, I've seen plenty of 5Ks for this and 5Ks for that and 5Ks, whatever the challenge was or the run was, you know, it's great to see all kinds of support out there
Mhm.
for all kinds of things, but I've never seen anything regarding encephalitis.
Right.
And so I'm like, what is this? This is cool. It's got my name all over it. If it means I got to go run and do something to support something that affected me specifically. So that's what caught my eye, I guess, last year. Then it would have been in the, I guess, spring or summer last year, same time period, I suppose. And I'm like, ooh, I got to get signed up for this. And so I was happy to do that and did a couple 100 miles, I guess, last year and got my sister and my mom involved. And we were happy to do that. I still have a picture of that up on my wall.
Oh,
How many miles we all did
neat.
for the Girls Challenge last year. And
Yeah, what a great keepsake.
you can see behind me, I have lots of medals and pictures on my wall from Spartan
Mhm.
Racer because as a memory loss person, memories are huge to me. I have a memory album for everything, but I'm also proud of some of the accomplishments you make along the way,
Right.
and I display those. And Spartan kind of does that in general. Just when you get a medal, you're supposed to hang it up, right? Well, this was
Mhm.
a medal from Nicole's challenge last year. That hey, cool. And I got to do that with my mom and my sister, and they helped raise some awareness, where they live as well, and got a couple of their
Mhm.
friends involved. So when I saw it again this year, I guess at that point I didn't realize it was an annual thing that you had been doing for years.
Yeah,
And
it's in the 10th year
yeah, I
for
saw that when I got
2022.
the email this year. So it was good to read up on that and hear more of Nicole's story and get
Mhm.
to know more about it than what I did last year. So that's what got me involved and wanted to set some higher goals and set some, I guess, put it out there more to the people that I do get to chat with on a daily basis. And they're used to seeing my workouts every morning on Facebook. It's just one of those things that I guess Spartans do, or just workout people do. Oh yeah, I ran so many miles today. So, when I got this, I was like, oh yeah, this is easy I track my mileage on a daily basis. I can do it for Nicole's challenge or whatever. And I don't know, I wanted to make this one because it hit obviously home for me that
Right.
it's who I am and with a group of people that understand, what
Mhm.
encephalitis really is. And I don't know, it's opened up some doors. Like I said, I wear the vest to work some days with this little thing on there and have customers ask me, what's that all about? And I've even had a couple customers donate, they love to hear it. So it's just, they never even knew what encephalitis was,
Right. Yeah.
or my coworkers.
3. Wipe out encephalitis! Woo!
So it's helped me open up doors even in where I spend my time on our Spartan race course or at work. I work at REI. I'm a shoe salesman there, and that's what I do part time. So
Mhm. Yeah, you're doing us such a great service, like for the community to be raising awareness and to be so vocal and passionate about, throwing yourself behind the cause, and that is just so admirable and just speaks to such strength and resilience and
thank
character that you have. it's been a pleasure to get to know you and your story, and it's just, yeah, it fills me with such awe because I'll still have some days where I'm just kind of laying in bed and don't feel very active, but then but then I'll think to people like you who are, trying to make the most
Sure,
of what's
sure,
occurred in the wake of encephalitis. So.
sure. And there's tough days, and that's what's it's always good to have, I guess, something positive that you can, do on a daily basis. Makes you feel like and then when you see others respond to it in a positive way, there's no better thing than that, I guess. And you never know what somebody might be going through, whether it's a disease or it's just, who knows what, but something small that you do and how you handle something. So, what seems huge to them sometimes, becomes just part of our daily life on a regular basis. But, and it's neat to see how even just small things that can impact people in a positive way. And
Mhm.
I've been fortunate enough to have people in my life that I've watched overcome difficult challenges as well, or even other Spartans that are, like I said, I've ran with guys with no legs, and what an inspiration it is to see somebody do that. And boy, I think I'm having a bad day, type of thing. And so it's those we surround ourselves with, and that's where it was important to be a part of what Encephalitis 411 is doing and building a sense of community that of like-minded people that, hey, I've been through this a little bit too. And this is a community that maybe they get me, and that's difficult sometimes because, going back to, coming back to a world that I didn't even remember, you don't feel like you always fit in. So
Mhm.
it's nice to find a community that does understand what the challenges
Right.
are, and to hear other stories from you and others and read those on Team Inspire and go, boy, I'm not the only one dealing with something like that. It's remarkable how much hope that gives you too when you see somebody, do something that you thought maybe, oh boy, I can't do that anymore. Oh yeah,
Mhm.
you might be able to if you just let yourself think in a more positive way. And that's, I don't know, I'm thankful for that. And Spartan's been able to allow me to do that. But I think it's just kind of how I was built and raised anyways as well. And I'm glad that part of me was still there. My mom looks at me and goes, oh, I remember that kid. And, there's part of me that I, didn't get forgotten. And I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you give me inspiration. I'm sure that through this interview, you will continue to inspire so many others in the encephalitis 411 community. So yeah,
Hope so.
it's been a pleasure to speak with you today, and thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
You bet, Alana. It's a pleasure chatting with you again. And to any of those listening, just know that there's so many opportunities for you, and sometimes it's good to forget some of them and make new memories. And that's what I've been busy doing, and I'm glad I get to make some with you guys as well. Thanks.